Thanks for joining us again. My name is Dan Speakman with LeBaron and Carroll Insurance, and we're thankful that you're taking some time out of your day to come and learn with us today. We're grateful to have Laura Newbrough from LNHR Consulting. She's going to be presenting for us today, and we'll turn the time over to her in just a moment. Before we do, just wanted to go over a few housekeeping items. As you are listening today, if you have questions along the way, there's several ways that you can kind of interject as we go along. You can either raise your digital hand in the webinar, or you can enter a Q&A, or you can go to the chat feature and type in a chat there. I've just enabled everyone to be able to chat. And so you can put a question there, and we'll answer those, or let Laura answer those as we go through. And then also there'll be time at the end. If you want to save questions till the end, you're welcome to do that, but you don't need to. Feel free to put a question in the chat whenever you would like. So with that being said, Laura, we will turn the time over to you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Dan, and a big thank you to LeBaron and Carroll for the opportunity today. We're excited to discuss this topic, which is always a topic, that is for sure. So again, thank you for joining us. I'm Laura Newbrough, and we have Diane Neiman on the line as well. We are with LNHR Consulting. We provide human resources services to a variety of businesses in a very different realm of industries. We have a team of certified HR directors, managers, and generalists. We're excited to get started. So today we're discussing workplace harassment. We as leaders and as business owners, we play a crucial role in creating a welcome, inclusive environment for all employees. Oops, there we go. And today we're going to discuss workplace harassment. Our objectives today, there we go. Sorry, my PowerPoint was a little bit behind. Our objectives today, we're going to define harassment. We're going to talk about the different types of harassment. We'll have an understanding of what to do when harassment occurs, and we'll learn about our responsibilities as supervisors and business owners and how we can also protect ourselves. All right, the definition of harassment is unwelcome conduct based on race, color, religion, gender, national origin, age, disability, or genetic information. So harassment becomes unlawful when enduring the offensive conduct becomes a condition of continued employment. So this means that employees should never feel that they have to tolerate any inappropriate or offensive behavior to keep their job. The severity of the conduct becomes problematic when it's severe enough to create a work environment that a reasonable person would consider intimidating, hostile, or abusive. This isn't just about occasional comments or minor disagreements. It's about persistent behavior that significantly impacts somebody's ability to feel safe and comfortable at work. And harassment is a form of employment discrimination that violates several key laws. Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 that prohibits discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, or national origin. And the Age Discrimination in Employment Act of 1967, also known as the ADEA, this protects employees who are 40 years of age and older from discrimination based on age. And the Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990. This prohibits discrimination against individuals with disabilities and requires reasonable accommodations for them. So why do we need to talk about harassment? Well, no one wants to work in an environment where they themselves or others are uncomfortable. The prevention and elimination of harassment is everyone's responsibility, especially us as business owners and leaders. And we want to keep the company out of the news and out of the courtroom, 100%. Types of harassment, there is sexual harassment, quid pro quo harassment, hostile work environment, third-party harassment, and bullying in the workplace. So we're going to cover these topics. Okay, sexual harassment is unwelcome, unwanted, or offensive sexual advances, requests for sexual favors, and other verbal or physical conduct of a sexual nature when submission to the conduct becomes either explicitly or Diane, help me out. Why am I stuttering today? It becomes either implied, thank you, It's an implied term or condition of employment. The conduct is unwelcome, unwanted, or offensive, and has the purpose of or effect of unreasonable interference with an individual's work performance or creating an intimidating, hostile, or offensive working environment. So what does this look like in the workplace? So quid pro quo, that is this for that. An example, a supervisor tells a subordinate employee that if they accompany their supervisor for a weekend getaway, the supervisor might be able to arrange for additional paid time off for the employee or look into a promotion for the employee. So this is a perfect example. If, anything unwanted, if they're inviting them to lunch or, hey, come with me on this business trip or a conference or something along those lines that is advancing to this, this is also unwanted behavior that can be construed as quid pro quo as well. Hostile work environment. Hostile work environment is created by a colleague whose action, communication, or behavior make doing your job impossible. This means that their behavior altered the terms, conditions, and or reasonable expectations of a comfortable working environment for employees. Additionally, the behavior, actions, or communication must be discriminatory in nature. So can you think of some hostile work environments that have come up in your career? I'm sure that you've seen things along those lines. We in HR get these types of complaints quite a bit that we do have to do investigations, and this does create a lot of extra time and cost to the company as well. Third-party harassment. Behavior not found offensive by some employees, but can create an offensive environment for other employees. Example, a group of employees talking about each other's sex lives in the presence of another person who feels very uncomfortable about such discussions. So I wanted to take a moment here and talk about third-party harassment because we had a situation come up with one of our clients that wound up being pretty costly. So one of our clients had acquired another small firm. And when they made the acquisition, they were unaware that one of the employees had been harassing not only employees within the organization, but employees of one of their clients. The client was also unaware. The client then did a reduction in force, and one of the employees that they had laid off came back with a lawsuit based on the harassment from the employee of what was now our new employee. Because some of that had happened before, during, and after the acquisition, both the former owner and now the new owner were financially responsible. So of course we ran an investigation, we went through the process, and on top of it, we had to lose a key person within the organization, and it was an organization that did require learned professionals. So we did have somebody with a certification that was required. So that was, now we had a gap there as well. But both of the companies, at the end of the day, they settled each at $15,000. And that was just what was out of pocket, not counting all the time that we had spent on the investigation, and then all the damage assessment that we had to do, and all the things that had to take place afterwards to get the company culture back on track. So this is something that can affect not only your environment environment, but it can be from an outside environment that can affect your employees too. So just something to keep in mind. It's just so important to continue these trainings and make sure that everybody is aware of what can happen.
Laura, quick question for you.
Yes.
So in your experience working with a cross section of different industries, what is the most common type of harassment you see, and how common is harassment from your perspective?
It is very common. We probably represent, I don't know, maybe 2,500 employees in total. And we have some investigation going on, usually on a weekly basis. We see bullying quite a bit. We do see sexual harassment as well. And the other thing with sexual harassment, it can be anybody. We had an experience recently where we helped a client through a sexual harassment claim. And when it was brought to our attention, the person who brought it to our attention said, well, I don't really know if this is sexual harassment because it was a man who was essentially being made uncomfortable by another man. And he said, well, I don't know if this is sexual harassment. I said, it absolutely is sexual harassment. After we went through and did our investigation, we did determine that the behavior was inappropriate. It was sexual harassment. Once again, we had to terminate the employee who was doing the harassing, and now we were down a person who, this was another situation where this person had like 5 or 6 different certifications. He was kind of a unicorn as far as that was concerned, but we can't have that behavior in the workplace. I mean, you're just opening the door for all kinds of different risks. So the sexual harassment, it's about educating our leaders and our managers to really understand that it can happen to anybody from anybody. But yeah, Dan, we see this quite a bit. It's really unfortunate. Kind of a common saying that we have is nobody is immune to these types of problems. It doesn't matter what industry you're in. We don't see it more in one industry than another. It happens everywhere, unfortunately. So again, it's about making sure that everybody's trained and everybody understands what to do. Okay, so bullying in the workplace. So bullying is when people deliberately use words or actions repeatedly against an individual or group to cause intentional, psychological, social, or physical harm. They usually want them to feel less powerful or helpless. And again, our concerns is that we're going to have a discrimination claim, any sort of harassment claim. We're going to have to go through this whole process. We are probably going to lose an employee or maybe more. Workplace violence, that is a real concern. We've had situations before where we've had to advise our clients to call the police. It's a drain on morale. You can only imagine when these things take place how difficult it is for people to focus on their work and be collaborative when all these things are happening in the background. Increased turnover, low productivity, and an impact, of course, on your bottom line. Bullying, of course, we have our statistics that we read all the time. So according to our statistics, bullying is 3 times more prevalent than sexual harassment. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about bullying versus harassment. What really is the difference? So really it's intent, motivation, and then we can talk about a little bit of the legal recourse. So the intent. Bullying is intentional harmful behavior, whereas harassment involves behavior that is discriminatory or based on protected characteristics. So it's from a motivation standpoint, bullying may be driven by a desire for power, control, or personal satisfaction. Whereas harassment is motivated to be prejudiced and biased against a person's protected characteristics. I'm sure all of us can think of an example somewhere in your career where you've seen, bullying kind of take place. Maybe even you didn't realize at the time, but you think back and you say, that was kind of bullying behavior. From a legal perspective, harassment is more likely to have legal consequences due to its discriminatory characteristics. But bullying might not always have the same legal framework, but that doesn't mean that we don't have to worry about that on the legal side from bullying. People can still hire an attorney, they can still go to the EEOC and file a claim whether or not it is actually true or whether or not it really applies to the EEOC. So we just don't want that. We don't want to have to deal with that. We want to be proactive. So what should an employee do when there is a harassment concern? And this section, I think, is most important from a leadership and business owner standpoint. So if an employee believes they have been subjected to discrimination, the workplace harassment or sexual harassment, they should report the behavior to their immediate supervisor, another member of management, or human resources. And if you're in a smaller firm, that one person might be wearing all those hats: human resources, management, supervisory hats. It's so important that no matter the size of your business, that you have a company handbook and you have a policy that talks about what to do if somebody is being harassed. By having that in place, that's your first line of defense, your first line of protection for the company and for you. Employees can complain verbally or in writing, and I will tell you, we sometimes see handwritten notes that are anonymous as well. Some people don't want to share their name or don't want to draw attention to themselves, but they want to let you know that the behavior is happening. So what is the impact of the harassment in the workplace? So 25% of workers have experienced workplace discrimination in their careers. That's CNBC. Employees experience discrimination are 32% less likely to reach their full potential. Workplace harassment and discrimination can result in an estimated $64 billion loss annually due to turnover. And improving workplace culture to promote inclusive, I don't know why I'm struggling today. An inclusive workplace and prevent harassment can increase job satisfaction by 20%. I'm getting an echo. There we go. Perfect. Okay. So why is it important for employees to report the harassment? Employees, this is so important. We need to make sure that our employees feel comfortable reporting harassment. We need to make sure that when they're onboarded, we talk about, you know, we don't tolerate this at work. If anything ever happens, you come to me or you go to human resources, whatever that needs to look like. So it's important because they could be hurt, they could be upset. Their productivity is going to go down. They're going to spend their time worrying about what is happening and how to, you know, kind of navigate through that. They're going to call in. They're definitely going to start calling in. You'll see that they're absent from work. Your work as your organization could be jeopardized. Your reputation as an employer, not only an employer, but with your clients, can be jeopardized. And the employees could be fearful of others. The workplace morale, it's going to be reduced. We're going to have a morale problem for sure. And why do employees hesitate to report workplace harassment? They fear they're going to lose their job. They fear retaliation. Again, going back to that handbook, when we have a policy in place that talks about how to report this, we can put a retaliation clause in there that you will not be retaliated against if you bring these claims to us, whether or not human resources or an investigation reveals that it has happened or what the cause was, it doesn't matter. There's no retaliation. You're getting somebody else into trouble. Fear of disrupting the workplace. People don't want to be embarrassed, like we talked about, you know, getting that note that's handwritten, slid underneath the door while we're not there. And the fear of not being believed. I think that this is a big one because people are afraid if I go and I tell on my supervisor who was harassing me or bullying me, or if I go tell on this other employee, nobody's going to believe me because this employee is liked by everybody. This employee is the, you know, life of the party when we go to events and things like that. So people, they do have these fears, and sometimes it keeps people from sharing this information with us in a timely fashion. And sometimes by the time that we find out, the employee's already quit or several employees have quit, and, you know, we're trying to figure out what is going on with turnover. So we need to be just ahead of the game before it's too late. So as a leader, what should we do? We should set an example of respectful workplace behavior. Exercise respectful behavior. Have clear expectations that discrimination, workplace harassment, and sexual harassment are not tolerated. Have a clear mechanism for reporting, including the ability to report another member of management should the supervisor be accused. And again, that goes back to the handbook. Who do I talk to if? Take immediate steps to stop the inappropriate behavior or conduct as it occurs or it is reported. Guard against retaliation. Handle investigations as discreetly and confidentially as possible. And be sensitive to the feelings of all involved. It's not easy for the person filing the complaint. It's not easy for the person that you have to sit down with and start asking these questions. It's not easy for anybody who has to be a part of the investigation because they witnessed something. We sit down in these conversations quite a bit. It is uncomfortable for the employees. We always kind of take a step in the beginning and just talk about, I mean, even just drawing that to the table. We know that this is uncomfortable. We appreciate you taking the time to meet with us. We want to make sure that we have an inclusive workplace and that everybody's comfortable. Just kind of setting that out in the open in the beginning and reiterating those values, I think, is really important. So when should you call HR? Managers should report to HR when they receive a complaint. As soon as they receive that complaint, forward it on to human resources or the person wearing the human resources hat. If the manager observes something that could be discriminatory behavior or bullying or something along those lines, they should report it into HR, and They can work with HR as well to determine how to properly message back to the group that this behavior is not going to be tolerated. Managers can call HR when they're unsure how to handle a situation as it's related to discrimination or harassment. So if they're unsure, if they need guidance, that's what HR is for. That's why we're here. It's important, though, time is always of the essence. So it's important that we report this immediately and start getting that ball rolling as soon as possible. So supervisors' guidelines: know the company's sexual harassment policy and keep the employees informed of the policy. Once a year, always a great opportunity to sit the entire group down, do a catch up on employee handbook policies in the organization, reminders. I love to also include, hey, don't forget to be checking on your paycheck and your withholdings, things like that, in those types of meetings. Making sure that your managers understand the policy forwards and backwards so they know what to do. You can also hold your managers accountable should something come their way. And then if they don't report it, now we can hold those managers accountable to their roles and responsibilities. Communicate the complaint procedures and keep those lines of communication open. Listen seriously to all harassment complaints as well. Act immediately if you suspect harassment and report the concerns to the appropriate department. Accurately document suspected incidents. Diana and I must say 1,000 times, document, 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 document. Unfortunately, if we don't have things documented, we can't show that it has happened. So we want to make sure that everything is documented, start to finish, even if it's just notes to yourself that's date stamped, time stamped. I've told people before, if you're in a hurry, send yourself an email. You'll have it date stamped, time stamped, and then we can include that in the documentation. And encourage your employees to say no to harassing behavior and keep everything confidential. It's important that everybody is protected throughout an investigation, before, during, and after, especially as we take those next steps to correct behavior, or we take next steps from a company culture standpoint to help kind of get everybody back on track. So protecting yourself as a business owner, a leader, a manager, always keep your hands to yourself. That is sometimes complaints that we get, that people touch shoulders or touch backs, things like that. We do get those complaints quite a bit. Keep on-the-job conversations respectful. I know it's easy as we get to know each other and maybe you've had a happy hour or a company event. It's those situations where conversations can go more off the business line and more to that personal side. We do have investigations that we have performed that took place because of a company event or outside of the workplace. Keep compliments casual. We just had a conversation earlier today with one of our other clients. The compliments came across or could be taken as sexual, and we wanted to make sure that we kind of realign that as well. Avoid jokes, words, phrases, or gestures with sexual meanings. And this is something, I mean, these are things that we even talk to our kids about when they go to school, right? They're teenagers, they're going to high school, like, please, no jokes. Make sure that everything is something we say in our house. Make sure that if you're making the joke or posting something or whatever you're about to write down, that if your grandmother were to read it, that she would not be offended. Respect a person's personal space. That is also something too, where we've had people, too close, somebody sitting at their desk, somebody's standing too close behind them. Just be aware that not everybody has the same bubble around them. Model the behavior that you expect from your employees. We talked about this earlier. Exercise, exercise, exercise. You want to make sure that you're setting the stage and setting the example. Lead by example. And again, at the end of the day, make sure if your grandma was reading it or listening to what you're saying, that it would be grandma approved. That's our joke in our household. So fostering an inclusive workplace culture. This is so important. This is when we're talking with candidates who are looking for new positions and looking to take their next steps. This always comes up. Tell me about the workplace. Tell me about the diversity. Tell me about any efforts that they make for an inclusive workplace. So some tips that we have on an annual basis, great idea. Anyone going into a managerial role, but always a great idea on an annual basis, just for a refresher, to attend some trainings. Let's do unconscious bias training. Encourage your team to become aware of their own biases, and that is something that we train in the unconscious bias training as well. It's just kind of taking a step back. Do I have any biases? Is there anything that I might be thinking that maybe I need to be a little bit more open-minded? Promote empathy and understanding within the team. Collaborate with HR on inclusive job postings as well. And again, we're looking to attract talent who wants to be with an organization and wants to grow in the organization. So let's attract the right people with the right culture. Help HR ensure fair and equitable hiring processes. HR's role within the hiring process is to establish the process and procedures and make sure that what we're doing does attract and include anybody and everybody. So when you're in that process, we encourage you to, kind of stick with the training, make sure that we're also practicing that as well. Support diversity and inclusion initiatives in hiring as well. Encourage open discussions and diverse viewpoints, and recognize each other's team members' unique contributions. That's always fun. And promote respect and equity within the team. So as managers and business owners and leaders, we are the key players in creating a respectful and inclusive and safe work environment. And by promoting respect, implementing clear policies, as we do on HR all the time, policy, encourage that open communication, the reporting process, and cooperate if and when there are investigations. Always promote that ongoing training. We're big on learning management systems, and there's a whole ton of free resources on LinkedIn Learning and TED Talks, all things, anything you can find. But all those combined, that's what helps keep this at bay. We don't want any problems going forward. We don't want to be the people in the news. So are there any questions that we can answer?
I haven't seen any others come through on my end, Laura.
Wonderful. Well, that's good. And thanks for your patience. I don't know why I guess I haven't presented in a while.
Oh, this has been
well, I'm
wonderful.
human too. Thank you. I'm human too. So
if people have questions that maybe they don't want to ask here, or they want to get in contact with you, how can they do that?
They can reach us through email. You can email hr@lnhrconsulting.com. And we'd be happy, anybody on this call who has follow-up questions, we would be more than happy to hop onto a phone call and kind of walk through some scenarios.
Okay, wonderful. Well, I think that's probably going to be good for today, unless, Diane, did you have anything you wanted to go over here today or talk about?
No, I'm good, but I do think there was one question that just popped up. What's the best way to start DEI training?
That's a great question. So what I would do, oh, I got an echo again. Okay, there we go. So what we typically recommend, we have some trainings that we kind of have on file that we kind of spruce up as we go along. But first and foremost, just identifying where you are as a company currently. Because when you identify where you are as a company currently, then we can kind of tailor some training to that as well. But just to start, I would start with kind of open dialogue with some of your managers to kind of get the conversation rolling. I think, once again, the more that questions that you ask about where they think they are and where they think the organization is, I think from there you can tailor some trainings to move forward with that. There's a lot of resources on LinkedIn Learning. There's a lot of resources that we find also through our organization. So if anybody has any questions or is looking for some suggestions, please reach out. We'd be more than happy to kind of deep dive a little bit and help tailor a program for you.
So, Laura, for those that don't know, what is DEI training?
Diversity, equity, and inclusion. That's what it stands for. So we're talking about having a diverse workforce where everybody feels welcome, ideas are shared, everybody's collaborating, and we're inclusive of all our employees and their backgrounds and what they bring to the table.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you. Well, anything else that you want to cover this morning? Oh, we just had one more come in here.
Perfect.
Concern is after hour get-togethers. How do you prep the team to be respectful with these kinds of outings?
So always start with your managers and your leaders. Your managers and your leaders are the ones who are setting the expectations. And that even though we're outside of work, we're still a manager and a leader. Start with managers and leaders. I always give them kind of sayings to help redirect conversations. We'll talk through, I mean, we kind of role play sometimes too, but I think it's important that they all have something to say, kind of scripted, if there is something that is going off track or something that's not going to be appropriate. And one of those things can just be talking with the managers about, hey, when we're out at these events, let's make sure, even though we're not in the office, this is still a work event. This is still company. The company is still liable. You're still liable as a manager for your role. You still have to set an example that just because you're at a happy hour or you're somewhere outside of work doesn't mean that whatever happens there is off limits from work. Unfortunately, we have conversations quite a bit where something's happened off the clock after happy hour, lunch, golf outings, things like that, where they don't always end up well for the employee who has done the behavior.
So just to recap that, you're recommending that you just start with managers and supervisors and train them, and specifically role play
Yes.
conversations.
Yes. Give them something to say when the conversation is going sideways. Much like when we sit down and kind of coach managers through, how to have a performance evaluation conversation or a performance improvement plan conversation. When things start to get sideways, we redirect, hey, we're here today to talk about this. And even giving them a line like, hey, we're here to have happy hour. Let's make sure that even though this is happy hour, that we're still maintaining our professional relationship.
Okay. Awesome. Well, no more questions have come in. So I think we'll just let people contact you if they'd like to host our webinar here. And Laura and Diane, thank you very much for joining us today. This has been wonderful.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
All right, everybody, have a wonderful afternoon.